Life Plus Indemares, preserving the unknown. "71% of our planet is covered with water, yet we have knowledge of only 10% of what our seas hold. What we do know is that hidden within the seas is an enormous biodiversity. Seas provide stability and are the main source of resources for life on Earth. Tourism, fishing, transport, and industry are obvious examples of how we use the seas. Nevertheless, these activities generate enormous pressure on the environment, and so they must be managed in order to ensure our future. This is not a simple task. In terms of biodiversity, Spain is one of Europe's richest countries, and twice as much of Spain's surface area is covered by water than by land. Conserving these waters is a pressing need, and moreover, mandated by international codes and standards. In order to speed up this process, 2009 saw the launch of the largest European marine conservation project in decades, Life Plus Indemares. This ambitious initiative from the Spanish government and the European Commission is aimed at meeting these international commitments through the Natura 2000 network. The Natura 2000 network, an ecological network of biodiversity conservation areas, is the #1 instrument for conserving the most endangered species and habitats in the European Union. 27% of Spain's landmass belongs to the network, compared to the 0.5% of its marine waters before the Indemares project began. Consequently, there was no time to lose, and the Biodiversity Foundation part of the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Environmental Affairs was charged with coordinating the project.
Indemares es uno de los proyectos más complicados en los que hemos trabajado. En tan solo 5 años había que documentar e investigar cerca de 4,7 millones de hectáreas en 10 zonas muy diferentes del país, lo que representaba una superficie tan grande como Aragón. Para ello hemos conformado un equipo de socios espectacular. El Ministerio de Agricultura, Alimentación y Medio Ambiente como institución responsable, 2 entidades de reconocido prestigio en el ámbito de la investigación, como el Instituto Español de Oceanografía y el Consejo Superior de Investigaciones Científicas, y Oceana, SeaOverLife, WWF, SECAC, CENMA y Alnitac, representando a las ONGs ambientales en el medio marino. Además, queríamos que la Red Natura 2000 en el mar fuera bien conocida por toda la sociedad y pretendíamos que el proceso de declaración de estos espacios fuera realizado con el consenso de los usuarios y de los actores implicados.
The Natura 2000 network is made up of sites of community importance, called SCIs, and special protection areas, called SPAs. In order to conserve deep-sea habitats, Indemares studied 10 large areas spread over the 3 biogeographic regions: the Mediterranean, the Atlantic, and Macaronesia, which represent a great diversity of species and habitats and boast some ecological assets never seen before. But our studies have reached even further by complementing the information on seabirds gathered in the Life Plus IBA Marinas project.
La Red Natura 2000 reúne los lugares de mayor valor ecológico de la Unión Europea. Para identificar qué valores merecen formar parte de esta red, es importantísimo comprobar que las zonas mantienen las especies y los hábitats prioritarios que se especifican en 2 directivas europeas, la Directiva de Aves Silvestres y la Directiva de Hábitat. SeaOverLife, previamente al proyecto Indemares, desarrolló un proyecto Life Naturaleza denominado IVAs Marinas, donde identificó qué zonas de nuestros mares cumplían estas condiciones para las aves. Ahora, con el proyecto Indemares, hemos podido ratificar que estos valores se mantienen a lo largo del tiempo y definir qué medidas de gestión son imprescindibles para asegurar su conservación futura. Pero hay algo más. El proyecto Indemares va a permitir que estas IVAs marinas identificadas en su día se conviertan en zonas CEPA o zonas de la Red Natura 2000, o lo que es lo mismo, que la protección de las aves marinas en España sea una realidad. Debemos felicitarnos. Es un gran éxito, fruto de un fantástico trabajo en equipo. Un ejemplo a seguir, sin ninguna duda.
On the other hand, there was considerably less information on the 10 areas studied for conversion to SICs. In 2009, we had only indications of the importance of these areas. The only certainty was our obligation to confirm within the time set whether their value as assets was real and to protect them by including them in the Natura 2000 network. Thus begins a highly significant scientific and administrative project, a huge challenge for progress in marine conservation. The countdown to Life Plus Indemares has begun. The Canary Islands is the region in Spain with the greatest sea surface area. The Canaries are a volcanic archipelago where the highest peaks have emerged as islands, while other peaks are underwater and have hardly been observed. Submarine elevations modify currents and raise nutrients to the surface. This is why large schools of fish appear there to feed. Right behind them, doing the same thing, are their predators, including marine mammals.
Avistamiento.
The organization responsible for studying cetaceans in this area is the SECAC. To carry out these studies, the SECAC establishes transects or fixed paths for taking a census and collecting data. Observers record all contacts and photograph dorsal and caudal fins, using these to identify each specimen. When they are dealing with deep diving species, monitoring is done with the help of hydrophones that capture the sounds they make. The effort is worth it. Indemares has been able to establish that the Canary Islands are located in one of the world's largest cetacean enclaves, where 1/3 of all known species can be found.
En Canarias se han descrito 30 especies de cetáceos. En el área que estamos estudiando en el sur de Fuerteventura y Banco de la Concepción 28 especies, y de las más significativas pues son los cifios, que son de los cetáceos menos conocidos en el planeta y que en la zona de Indemares del sur de Fuerteventura pues es un punto de alta frecuencia donde se pueden encontrar 3 especies de manera regular y en particular una que de la que no se sabe prácticamente nada, como el cifio de Yerbé.
But there are obstacles even in nature's paradise. Discarded fishing gear, rubbish, speeding ships, surveys, offshore prospecting, noise pollution. These are all dangerous to cetaceans. 6 of the world's 7 species of sea turtles migrate through here as well. They come from the Gulf of Mexico and Cape Verde and continue on their journey in the Canaries, where they sometimes get trapped in derelict fishing gear or end up as bycatch. Immersing ourselves, we find Amanay and El Banquete, submarine elevations which are considered oases of life in the oceans. And these two boast a broad diversity of species: deep coral reefs, black coral gardens, merle. These are hotspots of biodiversity and proof that the protection of submarine elevations and seamounts is crucial. The Spanish Institute of Oceanography is taking part in the studies of the habitats and biological communities of 6 of the 10 Indemares areas.
Indemares ha supuesto primero un reto. Teníamos que acceder a unos fondos hasta ahora inaccesibles. Hemos tenido que desarrollar pues una serie de metodologías que hasta ahora no teníamos muy desarrolladas, y además nos ha supuesto movilizar pues un equipo científico y técnico y combinar metodologías de distintas disciplinas que hasta ahora pues habíamos trabajado poco juntos. Yo creo que esto marca un antes y un después en la investigación oceanográfica, al menos en España.
We remain in the Atlantic to document Conception Seamount, a virtually unknown mountain that is nearly as large as the island of Gran Canaria. The base of the seamount is 2,000 meters under the surface, while the summit is 171 meters under the surface. At this depth, collecting the necessary scientific data requires a significant deployment of technology. The first phase of the research is to conduct a geomorphological study. This requires a multi-beam probe and the side-scan sonar we see here. Next, water samples are taken with the multi-bottle rosette. This carries a CTD probe that measures conductivity, temperature, and depth. The tricky part, however, is to identify the habitats and species existing in the area. To do this, nets are used to gather organisms living in the water column. Different methods are used for studying seabeds. When the seabeds are hard, a benthic trawling dredge is used. It's dragged along the sea floor, trapping organisms that live on the ground or have limited mobility. Specimens are brought up to the deck and washed before they are analyzed. When the seabeds are soft, samples are taken with this box corer or the beam trawl. These gather flora and fauna that live attached to the seabed. It's formed by a runner with a rigid structure that gathers specimens in a net as it slides along the seafloor. Although the data are fully analyzed on land, oceanographic research vessels are fitted with onboard laboratories. Here the samples are sorted, identified, and weighed. This way, scientists can use statistical programs and calculate the distribution and abundance of different species.
El valor de estas zonas viene dado sobre todo por el alto número de especies endémicas, por la poca distribución geográfica que tienen, por la importancia que tienen estos hábitats para otras poblaciones que están alojadas en ellos y por la fragilidad de estos hábitats desde el punto de vista biológico, como son hábitats bioconstructores, o desde el punto de vista geológico, como son chimeneas y demás.
Indemares has revealed the existence of some species in Conception Seamount that may be new to science, as well as groups of corals, sponges, sea urchins, and sea fans. But not only have the seabeds revealed surprises. Upwelling in the area attracts a significant diversity of seabirds, both breeding and migrating, looking for food. The densities of the endangered band-rumped storm petrel are the highest ever recorded in Spanish waters, and probably in any other part of the world. The upwelling in the area makes it a significant feeding area in the Canary Islands. It boasts the highest diversity of seabirds in the entire archipelago. (1,300 kilometers to the north, we find another area often visited by cetaceans, turtles, birds, and boats, the Alborán Sea. Every day, 1 in 5 boats sailing worldwide passes through the western end of the Mediterranean. We embarked on an old sailboat equipped with the latest technology for conducting research in a marine environment, the Toftevag, whose 100th birthday we celebrated halfway through the Indemares project. The best tools available were used for Indemares. For the first time in Spain, the Alnitac Association used a type of hydrophone that enables the identification of different species of cetaceans at a range of 1,000 meters. In addition, electronic monitoring systems have been developed to track whales, turtles, and human activities such as fishing and maritime traffic in order to manage the risks they generate. This is one way of trying to make the use of these areas compatible with the conservation of their ecosystems as required by the Habitats Directive.
Es muy difícil tener patrulleras que estén en el mar continuamente, es muy costoso y bueno, hay momentos que es absolutamente imposible realmente hacer una vigilancia o hacer una gestión adecuada. Y ahora el siguiente paso es que esto en Europa también sirva para que otras áreas Natura 2000 puedan beneficiarse de estos logros.
The Alborán Sea is one of Europe's most valuable marine areas, but also one of its most dangerous due to the intense maritime traffic in the Strait of Gibraltar. Moreover, the sound intensity is much greater in water than in air, which creates serious problems for cetaceans. They suffer internal bleeding, are unable to communicate among themselves, get lost, and end up beaching. It is for this reason that Alnitak has created a laboratory for measuring the mitigation of these impacts on Alborán Island. Before Indemares began, Alborán Island and its surroundings were already a site of community importance as a result of the wealth of its seabeds. During the project, the University of Malaga and the Autonomous University of Madrid conducted detailed investigations and discovered 10 species whose existence in the Mediterranean had been unknown, in addition to 13 others detected that are more than likely new to science. This is an area of great diversity, with seabeds of merle and deep gravel, along with some sponge gardens never seen before. The biodiversity discovered led to a decision being taken to expand the protected area. A little further north, also in the Alborán Sea, there is another area of great interest. Southern Almeria is a vital migration corridor for cetaceans, seabirds, and sea turtles. It offers a large variety and abundance of feeding habitats and is host to a large number of loggerhead turtles, bottlenose dolphins, common dolphins, Cuvier's beaked whales, and sperm whales. It is also important as a feeding area for the Balearic shearwater and the Audouin's gull, attracting a decent number of Atlantic species such as gannets and Atlantic puffins. And there remains much to discover beneath the surface.
El Seco de los Olivos es un ejemplo del poco conocimiento que hay sobre el mar. Se trata de una montaña sumergida a solo 12 millas de la costa de Almería y a pesar de esta corta distancia no se había filmado nunca esta montaña hasta que Oceana tomó las primeras imágenes. Entonces descubrimos que, como en tantas otras ocasiones, la basura había llegado antes que la investigación científica. Sin embargo, estamos a tiempo de detener la degradación de esta montaña y conseguir su protección.
An ROV-1000, an underwater vehicle capable of descending to a depth of 1,000 meters, was used to document the Seco de los Olivos or Chela Seamount. The ROV is attached to the ship by a fiber optic cable that enables what is being recorded to be seen live. Technicians coordinate with the captain to steer the ROV across the seabed so that the boat moves in the same direction. This task is greatly complicated by the existence of currents. If the ROV gets hooked on something, the outcome could be fatal, because at these depths it would be impossible to free the ROV, and so it would be lost forever.
Los muestreos que estamos realizando van desde los 700-750 metros de profundidad, que es en la zona más profunda que se encuentra en el sur del Seco, hasta más o menos unos 80 metros de profundidad, que es donde se halla la cima. Esta cima da lugar al desarrollo de algas, sobre todo de algas rojas, que pueden generar en algunos lugares coralígeno, fondos de Maer, y sobre ellos vivir una amplia y diversa gama de especies.
Specimens as interesting as the angular rough shark, a critically endangered species in the Mediterranean, have been found in the Chela Seamount. The ROV shows an amazing variety of creatures that live in total darkness, withstanding cold temperatures and high pressures. Under these conditions, it's no wonder that things appear rather colorless. Even the corals, which are very abundant, are different from those that receive sunlight. Some species are commonly part of our cuisine. Others, like this small carnivorous sponge, had never before been seen in Spain. And yet, most remarkable of all is finding signs of human activity in places that have never before been scientifically explored.
Gracias a Indemares hemos podido llegar a lugares y conocer lugares hasta donde nunca había llegado hasta ahora el ser humano. Una de las cosas que más sorprende a los científicos del proyecto es haber descubierto que hasta en esos sitios hay huellas de la actividad humana y del impacto de las actividades del hombre. Por eso, desde el primer momento lo que se ha pretendido es no solamente levantar información científica con el proyecto, sino documentar cuáles son las actividades que pueden ser más impactantes. Explotaciones petrolíferas, tráfico marítimo, aerogeneradores, de modo que puedan o bien reducirse su impacto o bien gestionarse en el futuro.
Toda esta información ha sido georreferenciada y trasladada a un sistema de información geográfica, y esta información, junto con la información sobre ecosistemas y sobre hábitats y sobre especies procedente de las investigaciones científicas, nos permiten analizar, uniendo todas las capas de información, dónde se producen los principales impactos.
The project's scientific committee, which includes all partners, meets twice yearly to share findings, harmonize methodologies, and take decisions.
Para proteger hay que conocer. El principal reto que teníamos era obtener información científica de calidad para poder comprobar que determinados lugares merecían, por su geodiversidad y por su biodiversidad, estar presentes dentro de la Red Natura 2000. Todo ello además en un marco temporal y presupuestario muy ajustados, pero por suerte hemos tenido los mejores especialistas con nosotros.
Just like submarine elevations, canyons are hotspots of biodiversity. When Indemares was launched in 2009, information about this area was extremely scarce. And researchers' first surprise was a big one. This is not a single canyon, but a whole system of canyons that join with the main one, ending in the abyssal plain 4,800 meters below the surface. It is undoubtedly one of the most extraordinary ecosystems in the Bay of Biscay. The exploration of Avilés Canyon was carried out aboard another cutting-edge research vessel. The Liropus, an underwater vehicle custom-built for the Spanish Institute of Oceanography, was used for deep-water filming.
El Liropus 2000 es un robot que adquirimos para el proyecto Indemares. Tiene una capacidad de trabajar a profundidades de hasta 2.000 metros y va dotado de una serie de cámaras y de luces de distinta longitud de onda que nos permiten observar el fondo. También tiene unos sistemas de recogida de muestras, es un brazo articulado y un sistema de succión que nos permite tomar muestras del fondo.
Uno de los mayores acontecimientos a lo largo del proyecto fue identificar en las cabeceras de los cañones de Avilés y La Gaviera un arrecife de corales de aguas frías que está situado a una gran profundidad, entre 800 y 1200 metros, en un mundo oscuro en donde se han encontrado los mayores niveles de biodiversidad de toda la zona.
Submarine canyons are very fruitful for fishing. Avilés Canyon is crucial to the life cycle of commercial species such as anglerfish or hake. And so fishermen bear witness to the fact that its importance is not only ecological, but also economic. There are other parties interested in the abundance of fish, the cetaceans. To study these, SEMA has followed a methodology similar to that used in the Canary Islands and in the Alboran Sea. A computer program randomly establishes transects that the boat will follow. Observers work in 1-hour shifts so that they do not lose their focus. They record sightings with cameras and video recorders and fill out data sheets. The collaboration of fishermen is fundamental to this project, since they are among those who use the sea most. For this reason, this NGO has conducted an extensive outreach campaign in the fisheries sector, providing data sheets and material for recording sightings.
Recogemos información por diferentes vías, tanto de vía verbal, a través de encuestas, y también realizamos embarques en unas jornadas en diferentes artes de pesca, y los hemos realizado en Galicia, en Asturias, en el País Vasco.
We continue with submarine canyons, but this time in the Mediterranean. Here we find one of the marine systems with the greatest complexity and biodiversity of all those studied during the project. On board the research vessel Galicia del Cid, the CSIC explored the submarine canyons that extend from Cape Creus to the south of the Gulf of Lion. 2,200 species were recorded in these waters, a third of all those known in the Mediterranean. A broad variety of techniques were used to conduct the studies. Some of these were very innovative in Spanish oceanographic studies, such as manned submarines. The German Jago submarine made it possible to explore previously unknown areas of the Mediterranean seabed and to generate high-quality images. It was observed that some of the habitats studied, such as the communities of cold water corals in the Creus Canyon, are essential to species such as hake. This is why conserving this type of habitat means preserving the fishing sector and the local economy. One very important find was the discovery of an 11,000-year-old fossil reef of polychaetes 110 meters below the surface, coinciding with the level of the sea during the last glacial period. Well-preserved communities dominated by sea fans, sponges, and corals have been found on this continental shelf between Cape Creus and the canyon. This good condition is due to the fact that it has not been affected by trawling, although these are most likely artisanal fishing areas. These communities are an example of marine habitats that can recover with the conservation measures for the new protected marine area.
El hecho de que los corales blancos del Cap de Creus, en algunos casos, algunas especies, crecen casi tan rápido como los corales tropicales. Esto es un dato ecológico muy importante. Se han encontrado comunidades de krill espectaculares, como nunca se habían visto en el Mediterráneo, y esto es fundamental para lo que es la alimentación de muchas especies, tanto peces, crustáceos como incluso ballenas.
During the campaign, besides analyzing the images obtained, different organisms are collected and analyzed. Some of the samples collected are taken to the wet laboratory, where an attempt is made to identify them. If this is not possible, photos are taken and sent to specialists. This sample of krill is one of the most spectacular, with more than 1,000 individuals per cubic meter. Specimens are also captured with dredges and are photographed for identification in a similar manner. Organisms such as sea fans and crinoids are collected with the submarine. These are then submerged in a tank at 12 degrees Celsius in the dark in order to be able to keep them alive for study in the experimental tanks at the Institute of Marine Sciences in Barcelona. The upwellings associated with the submarine canyons make Cape Creus an important feeding area for seabirds, particularly for the Mediterranean shearwater. The Gulf of Lion is also one of the areas with the largest population of cetaceans in the Mediterranean Northwest. Bottlenose and striped dolphins and fin whales use this area for feeding and as a migratory corridor. Researchers at CSIC's Institute of Marine Sciences must redouble their efforts and work with another of Indemares' areas, this time in collaboration with the Spanish Institute of Oceanography, or IEO. The IEO is responsible for studying seabeds from 50 to 100 meters below the surface in the Menorca Channel. The ROV's laser pointers allow us to appreciate the size of the inhabitants of the sandy seabeds passing by in front of the camera.
En esta profundidad, en el canal de Menorca, destacan los fondos de algas rojas calcáreas que forman dos tipos de hábitats, que serían los jardines de coralígeno y los lechos de Mael. Son dos tipos de hábitats muy característicos del Mediterráneo, que son muy longevos y albergan una gran cantidad de especies.
At the 100 to 500 meter level, researchers from the Institute of Marine Sciences in Barcelona take over the investigation. Fish and sea urchins appear between the marl. There are also spectacularly beautiful yellow and orange corals to be seen.
En el canal de Menorca nos ha sorprendido encontrar gorgonias y corales blandos y amplias zonas de corales negros que estaban casi extintos en el Mediterráneo occidental y en realidad corresponden a pequeñas ventanas hacia el pasado, hace 5 millones de años, cuando el Mediterráneo estaba conectado con lo que es ahora el Atlántico y el Caribe, y con una fauna tropical que luego ha quedado relicta en algunas zonas muy concretas en el canal de Menorca.
The images recorded reveal fields of feather stars, or crinoids, animals whose name means lily-shaped. These are species that are essential, serving as nurseries for many species of fish and crustaceans. There are also fields of brittle stars and multitudes of anemones. Some of them have been filmed capturing prey, something ordinarily very difficult to observe at these depths. In these areas, elegant Cerianthus coexist with many other creatures of the darkness that are more or less known. We find several species of marine worms, some so amazing they might seem like some kind of strange waste, were it not for the fact that real rubbish is easily recognizable. Some remains of fishing gear have been there so long that they have been completely colonized. Nonetheless, they serve as evidence of this area's historical use by fishermen. The Menorca Channel is used as a feeding area by colonies of Cory's shearwaters, Audouin's gulls, European shags, and especially by the Balearic shearwater, an endemic species whose population has declined greatly in recent years.
Nos encontramos dentro del área indemares denominada Delta del Ebro-Columbretes y desde el punto de vista de las aves marinas es probablemente la zona estrella de indemares y también una de las áreas de alimentación para las aves marinas más importantes en todo el Mediterráneo. Aquí tenemos aves que vienen a alimentarse desde zonas remotas como las Islas Baleares y también poblaciones muy importantes de aves reproductoras en el entorno de la zona, tanto en el delta del Ebro como en las propias Islas Columbretes donde nos encontramos.
The Ebro's contribution of nutrients makes this area very productive, with a large number of prey, especially small pelagic fish, a fact which explains the abundance and diversity of the birds. It could be described as their main pantry in the Iberian Mediterranean. Nevertheless, their life is not easy. When the birds fly out to sea in search of food, they run the danger of getting caught in fishing gear. Every year, thousands of specimens die, not to mention the impacts caused by the pollution and degradation of the sea. This is the situation with the Cory's shearwater. In just 2 decades, this species of bird has decreased from almost 200 breeding pairs in the Columbretes Islands to fewer than 50. This has caused its population to be studied in great detail. Back in 2011, the SEO BirdLife Organization team found a small Cory's shearwater female hidden in a crack in the ground. The leg band showed that the bird had already been registered, and now it has been weighed and measured. The researchers mark it with a marking pen to distinguish it from its mate, and so they can see when they take turns incubating the eggs. They also attached a GPS to it. This way, they'll be able to know how much time she spends at sea, what her flight paths are, and what kind of boats she might be interacting with. The Columbretes Islands environment is also very notable for the conservation of its seabeds and the broad diversity of species. The University of Barcelona has filmed underwater forests that are notable for their good conservation. Algae and sea fans are abundant, and this causes fish and their predators as well to become concentrated. So we find one of the greatest concentrations of cetaceans of the Mediterranean. Another area of great importance to fisheries is the Gulf of Cadiz because of its rich variety of fauna. The result of it being a point of convergence for intense and nourishing marine currents that increase biodiversity. However, the type of life that occurs in the depths, where light can't reach, has been little studied. This is an area of extreme chemosynthetic environments, documented thanks to the INDEMARES project. Thus, scientists have studied interesting mud volcanoes located from 350 to 1,200 meters below the surface of the sea.
El interior de los volcanes de fango está saturado de metano y estos lugares que están cargados de metano también están ocupados por agrupaciones de bacterias. Las bacterias tienen una tarea muy simple, que es la de transformar el metano en bicarbonato. Para que este bicarbonato reaccione con el magnesio o el calcio que está disuelto en el interior del sedimento para precipitar estructuras tubulares, que son las famosas chimeneas, o bien estructuras planares, que son los enlosados.
This mechanism prevents methane, a greenhouse gas, from rising to the atmosphere. It also transforms soft seabeds into hard seabeds, making it possible for species such as cold water corals, which are biodiversity hotspots, to settle. The Spanish Institute of Oceanography has filmed images of them with the ROV Leuropus, and has identified fields of sponges, crinoids, and a wide variety of other species. The VOR, a vehicle that, unlike the ROV, does not allow researchers to see live images, was also used in this area, so there is always a surprise awaiting us when it is brought up on deck. Thanks to this vehicle, we were able to observe dense clouds of krill at a variety of depths. Among the frenzy of these small prawns, a relative of the shark, the chimera, appears, and we are able to get glimpses of fields of glass sponges. Indemares has made it possible to film the darkest and most out-of-the-way depths of an area which is very near the Spanish mainland, but almost entirely unknown and teeming with abundant wonders of life. This ecosystem, amazing and unexpected, is a unique place among the 10 areas studied at Indemares. Its uniqueness arrives from the identification of highly valuable natural habitats in places where the accumulation of methane in the sediment could have prevented life from developing. The reality is just the opposite. We are about to conclude our tour of the 10 Indemares areas, and in our search for an even tougher challenge, we find that the deepest Indemares area is also the farthest from the coast. The Galicia Seamount, a true submarine elevation 180 miles offshore. This mountain is comparable to Mount Dede, only submerged and wrapped in darkness. Its summit is 600 meters below the water's surface, and its walls drop rapidly from 1,500 to 5,000 meters deep to the Iberian Abyssal Plain. A real technological challenge for researchers. Among the least intrusive technologies for studying marine life are sled photogrammetry, which allows photos and videos of large areas to be taken, along with the photolander. This device is placed on the seabed. Its operation is simple. It uses bait to attract fish and shellfish, which are photographed when they approach. In addition, the photolander allows researchers to collect specimens of small crustaceans that enter the trap.
Bueno, en el Banco de Galicia hemos encontrado hasta ahora cerca de 1 millar de especies, algunas de ellas nuevas para la ciencia. En este banco submarino, que tiene un tamaño más o menos como la provincia de Lugo, hemos encontrado unas poblaciones increíbles de tiburones de profundidad, que son especies altamente vulnerables, y unos extraordinarios arrecifes de corales de aguas frías.
The high productivity of these waters results in cetaceans being common inhabitants. Species such as the bottlenose dolphin and the fin whale use this area for feeding and migration.
Durante estos 3 anos se abordaron diversas labores, unha labor de seguimento marítimo das dúas áreas, Cañón de Avilés e Banco de Galicia, un labor de avaliación do sector productivo mariño en canto a impacto de capturas accidentais e outras informacións ambientais relativas ao sector productivo, E unha terceira fase que sería relativa á educación ambiental, coa edición de materiais e actividades para incrementar a sensibilidade ambiental sobre o medio mariño en xeral e as especies ameazadas.
This area attracts a significant number of birds. This is particularly true of the band-rumped storm petrel, both for its high number of individuals and because it is an extremely rare species in Spanish peninsular waters. Let us now fly 700 kilometers away to Madrid, where in March 2013, the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Environmental Affairs Events Room was the site of a seminar aimed at presenting the scientific advances contributed by INDEMARES. This meeting also marked the starting point of one of the last phases of the project. Public participation and the declaration of the areas included in the Marine Natura 2000 network.
La Red Natura 2000 trata de compatibilizar usos humanos respetuosos con el medio ambiente con la conservación de los valores de las zonas que se han seleccionado para proteger. Lo que se pretende desde el Ministerio es que la gestión de la Red Natura 2000 marina y en concreto de las zonas indemares es que sea una gestión muy cercana a los sectores y muy consensuada con ellos.
Y para ello lo que hemos hecho es una serie de seminarios participativos donde les hemos involucrado a todos ellos, les hemos explicado los valores, lo que es la Red Natura 2000 y posteriormente, como es lógico, les hemos escuchado la información que tenían de la zona, su importancia socioeconómica para considerar toda esta información a la hora de proponer los lugares a la Comisión Europea.
El concepto amplio que tiene que tener en cuenta las necesidades humanas de productos y servicios, la gestión de empleo, los aspectos sociales. Hacemos ese mensaje. El sector está de acuerdo. Tiene que colaborar y colaborar. Tenemos que escuchar al sector reconociéndole que su medio.
While the public participation process moves forward, scientific reports are received and final invoices are audited. The whole team works round the clock to complete the official Natura 2000 network proposal forms. Brussels must receive proposals for the declaration of sites of community importance and special protection areas before the deadline runs out. Even though there are to be nearly 50 different areas, nearly 8 million hectares. And finally, after months of frenetic activity, with the boats having been laid up for the winter for some time, the last email is sent.
El proyecto Life Indemares, que ha durado 6 años, es probablemente el proyecto de investigación marina más importante que se ha desarrollado íntegramente en España. En él han participado más de 300 personas, 200 de ellas investigadores. Se han realizado más de 110 campañas oceanográficas, 50 publicaciones en revistas científicas y se han descubierto, hasta la fecha, decenas de nuevas especies para la ciencia. El proyecto Indemares es la gran apuesta del Gobierno de España y de la Comisión Europea por la conservación de nuestros mares y por la creación de la Red Natura 2000 en el medio marino. Para la Fundación Biodiversidad ha supuesto, sin lugar a dudas, un gran reto de gestión y de coordinación.
El proyecto Indemares ha supuesto un antes y un después en la conservación de nuestros mares. Desde el Ministerio de Agricultura, Alimentación y Medio Ambiente siempre hemos sostenido la necesidad de integrar todas las actividades humanas, todos los usos, como el pesquero, con la protección del medio marino, de tal manera que se desarrollen de un modo sostenible. Indemares supone además un avance fundamental en materia de conocimiento sobre nuestros mares y océanos. Con la información que hemos recogido está garantizada la investigación científica marina para los próximos años. Esto ha sido posible con una inversión de más de 15 millones de euros con la cofinanciación de la Comisión Europea. Y el resultado está a la vista. Se han propuesto 10 nuevos lugares de interés comunitarios y 39 zonas de especial protección para las aves. Esto supone pasar de proteger apenas el 1% a tener superficie marina protegida del 8% en la actualidad, con lo cual nos acercamos ya al objetivo que España tiene planteado para el año 2020 de alcanzar el 10% de sus aguas marinas protegidas. Puedo afirmar, por tanto, que Indemares no es solo un éxito rotundo para la protección del medio ambiente marino, sino un éxito enorme para el conjunto de los españoles.